Okay, everybody. I had some recent inquiry on how to make a homemade dubbing brush maker, dubbing block, if that's what you want to call it. I know there's some companies out there. I'm not knocking them for making their products. Their products are fantastic. But I know with the economy in these times, you know, forking out $90 for something to spin dubbing brushes with is probably out of the question for a lot of people. So that being said, I put my head together with my father, who's a carpenter, and I made a very reasonably priced one that will only require you to have, you can use your normal dubbing spinner like you see here, with the use of the springs from 2 pens, a couple of screws, and a couple of finish nails, and about an 18-inch piece of 1x6, which you see here, pine or whatever you want to use. You can make yourself your own little dubbing block. Now, what I did, like I said, this is about 18 inches. I liked 18 inches for one reason, and one reason only. It allows me to make a dubbing brush that I can do about a dozen flies out of. So a lot of these dubbing brushes I make, I use for my nymphs that I tie. Like you saw in my videos, my scud, a couple of my case caddis patterns. I'm going to show you how I built this first. As you can see, I'll zoom in a little bit here. This is a 1x6 piece of pine. Alright, it's really not an inch thick. It's probably closer to, like, 7/8 thick. You can see down the center of it, I've cut out a channel. If you've got access to a table saw, you can dado that out. I made it about a 1/2 inch deep, maybe 3/8, and it's about 1 inch to 3/4 of an inch across. That's perfect for me to get my dubbing material into. On this end up here, this is the business end. This is where your wire and stuff is going to hang. I put a small 1/2 inch finish nail right there, because that's what you're going to wrap your wire around. I put another 1 inch nail right here. You could do something more fancy. I didn't really particularly care. I know it's not that aesthetically pleasing, but it fits the purpose. And then I took a small 1/2 inch screw. And if you can see, on that 1/2 inch screw, there's a spring attached to it. Okay? If you got one of those clickable pens, or 2 of them, take the springs out of them when the ink goes dry. Now, on the other end, I'll zoom this out. Hanging off the side here, I did the same thing. Another 1/2 inch screw with a spring on it. Now, basically, what's going to happen when you go to make your dubbing brush, which I'll show you here in a second, you're going to take whatever kind of wire you want. And like I said before, I use, for my really small, anything under 14 or a 16 and down, I'll use extra small wire. 14 to 12, I'll use small. And from 12 and up, I'll use brassy size wire. This is a brassy size wire. So what I'm going to do first, you can see here, I'll position my table a little bit. The end with the screw is going to be facing you. And I'm going to take my wire out, measure out a piece that goes from that nail all the way to the end. This is going to be my starting point. And I'm going to wrap this counterclockwise, or clockwise, 2 wraps around that spring and screw. I'm going to drop my dubbing twister right on there. I'm going to measure out my wire to there, just like so. Before I do that, once I get the proper amount of wire out, I take some dubbing wax. I'm going to wax this piece of wire real quick, just like you see here. Then I'm going to come up to that nail, wrap it once clockwise, push it down, then go to the front side of that screw, wrap around it once, wrap around it twice, and then drop my wire right on there, on that other little thing. Now, alright, I got my wire. You can push it down, it'll come up off the nail. Sitting right down the center of that channel. I'm going to take my dubbing material, and I'm going to start placing it in the center of that channel, working my way, and you make it as sparse or as thick as you want. I know some of you probably think, oh, this takes a little bit of time, but actually it's not once you get the hang of it. I'm talking a little too much, I would have this thing done already, normally. But you'll see.
Now what you want to do also, which I forgot to advise you of, you can kind of see I finished this board off. If you want to finish the board, what I did is I used boiled linseed oil after I went through about 3 different types of sandpaper, up to about 200 grit, and you'll get a nice little finish on there.
Work my way right down that center channel there. Zoom in so you can see. There you go. Now you're looking at this and you're probably thinking, wow, a lot of this stuff is going to be waste when it's all said and done, but you'll see the other nifty little trick with this stuff. Alright, now I get it all the way down to about where I think this thing's going to be good. I take that other piece of wire I had, I'm going to run some wax across that. And then while holding my dubbing twister, I'm going to unravel that wire, and then I'm going to fold it right over the top of that other piece I've got down the center, just like so. You can see here. I'm going to pick up my dubbing twister, and you start slow to begin with, and start turning that thing. Once you start seeing the wire kind of start turning all that material, I'll zoom in on that for you. We'll start to see it kind of turn. You can start speeding up your revolutions of your dubbing twister. Now you want to make sure at the end where that nail is that your wire's on. You want to keep your fingernail right on that wire and right up against that nail so it doesn't kick loose on you. And you always want to put that top layer of wire that you fold back over the piece that's laying on the bottom of your twister. You want to make sure you go to the same side of the nail that you went to when you initially started it. Now, I spin this, you'll see, you can just keep spinning it. Eventually the wire will break on its own. That tells you that it's spun tight enough. If you don't spin this tight enough, it'll fall apart on you. There it goes. Just like so. As you can see here, got me a nice little wire. The best thing about this is, when it's all said and done, you pop that off. You get yourself a nice little brush right there. Now you've got all this stuff that fell, some of that material that kind of slid off, or it fell off while you're spinning it. Just push it all into the center channel, off the edges, and you got all that stuff that's left. Put that right back in your dubbing packet, so you get very, very little waste. But as I showed you before, that's a nice little rope that you made there, you know. And that one right there will probably tie about 10 to 12 flies. And that's it. For about $5 you can make this thing.